Before, we would like to acknowledge that Royal Roads University is in the beautiful hands of the peoples of the Esquimalt and Songhees, and we are very grateful to be able to study, work, and live in this place where Indigenous and non-Indigenous people get together to learn and to understand the history, present and future scopes of Indigenous people. So without further ado, today we're going to be talking about accommodations and where can students that come to Royal Roads University can stay while they study. So today we're going to be talking about the on-campus accommodations. We're going to be talking about the Canada Homestay Network and its services, and we're going to be talking about the rental options. And for that, we have an exciting panel of 3 women that are going to be talking about this. And Christine Toller, Manager of Client Services at Royal Roads University, is going to be talking about the on-campus accommodations. Thank you so much, Christine, for being here with us, and welcome, Christine. Also, we're going to be having Karen Kelt from the Canada Homestay Network, and we're going to be having Doniel McNabb, Student Engagement Coordinator, to talk about rental options. So without further ado, I'm going to hand the virtual floor to Christine Toller. Christine, thank you and welcome again.
Oh, my pleasure to be here, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present to you today about on-campus accommodations at Royal Roads. Next slide, please. On campus at Royal Roads, we have accommodations within our Nixon building, and at present we have 92 rooms available for students. We have 33 rooms, which are ensuite rooms with private bathrooms, queen-size bed, a desk, and sitting area. These rooms also come with linens, towels, mini fridge, microwave, and a coffee maker. Additionally, 3 of these ensuite rooms are designed with accessibility in mind. They have roll-in showers and push-button activated room doors if needed. In addition to our ensuite rooms, we have 59 dormitory-style rooms. These rooms have a shared washroom facility. And these modest rooms consist of a twin bed, computer desk with chair and sink. And they also include linens and towels upon arrival. You can see an example of that style of room on the lower right-hand side of the slide. Our shared washroom facilities are located throughout our accommodation floors, and we do have single-use gender-neutral washrooms as well, designed with accessibility needs in mind. All of our rooms include access to laundry rooms with coin-operated machines. We have student lounges with access to refrigerators, microwave, toaster, kettle, and coffee makers. And for those that need a space to study outside of the room, there's 24-hour access to computers and printers in our Learning and Innovation Center on site. Next slide, please. Our ensuite rooms were renovated this fall of 2020, and we're just going to share a quick video walkthrough of these updated rooms. Thank you. That video is included on our website, which I'll share in my last slide. It kind of was showing a little glitchy for me. So if you want to take a look at it, I'll share where the website is shortly. Now, the important question is, how do you make the reservations on campus? Well, we have two different processes, and it depends on whether you're coming to stay for a short-term residency or if you're moving to Victoria for an on-campus program. So firstly, if you're looking to book on-campus accommodations for your short-term residency, program areas do send out a booking code and a process. So approximately 60 days before your on-campus residency, you'll receive a code through email. You'll use that code online to reserve either your dorm room or ensuite room. And you're welcome to stay on campus for the dates of the residency, plus 1 day before and 1 day after your residency. Room rates for the two styles of rooms for residencies are $45 per night plus taxes for the dorm room, $90 per night plus taxes for the ensuite room. And if you do require one of those en-suites with the private washroom due to a medical condition or other accessibility need, our accessibility services team is pleased to assist you with that reservation process. Next slide, please. Perfect, thank you. Royal Roads wants to ensure your transition to Victoria is a smooth one. So if you are looking to relocate to Victoria while doing on-campus programming, you are permitted to stay on campus while you're searching for housing in Victoria. So in order to do so, you can request up to 14 nights of dorm room accommodation while looking for more permanent long-term housing. There's a form online, and on my last slide, I'll share that website address where you can access that form. You submit that form up to 3 months before the start of your program, and your reservation is made, availability permitting, approximately 1 month before the requested arrival date. The Welcome Desk team will walk you through that process. And the rates for these stays are currently $45 per night for these dorm rooms. Next slide, please. So after today, if there's questions that you have about on-campus accommodations, you can reach out to our Welcome Desk team. We are happy to help in a variety of ways. We can be reached by email at welcomedesk@royalroads.ca. You can reach us by phone at 250-391-2511. Or if you're already in town, you can visit us. We're on the main level of the Learning and Innovation Center. And as promised, there's a lot more information online. So this is where you'll go to make your reservation or to submit your request form for temporary accommodations. It's www.royalroads.ca/accommodations. And it's going to give you two options once you're on that website. You can learn about staying on campus and off campus. And if you wanted to reach out to the Welcome Desk, we're open from 8 a.m. till 7:30 p.m. daily, including statutory holidays. Thank you for allowing me to present, and we look forward to welcoming you to campus.
Thank you so much, Christine, for your presentation. And I would like to tell the participants that are joining us today that you can ask any questions during the presentation. You can type them on your chat, and then at the end of the presentation, we will make sure to answer those questions. Thank you so much, Christine, again. And now we would like to welcome Karen Colt, Relationship Manager at Canada Homestay Network. She's going to be talking to us about the services of the Canada Homestay Network. Thank you so much, Karen, and welcome.
Thank you. It's very nice to be here this morning. Next slide. Yes, so Canada Homestay Network, just a little bit about us. We're a family enterprise started by the Wilson family over 25 years ago. So they've been doing homestay for a long, long time. We're a not-for-profit society, and we do homestay coast to coast. So all the way from Victoria to Prince Edward Island on the east coast of Canada. We have been supporting Royal Roads for over 14 years, placing students in homestays in the local school area. Next slide, please. So what is homestay? It's a little bit different than living on campus or living in your own apartment. Homestay is a family setting. So you are becoming part of the family. And it's really nice, especially when you first come to Canada, to have a family to teach you the bus routes and help you get a cell phone and all those types of things. So if you're moving just from your own family home in a different country and you're coming to Canada, it's a really nice way to meet people, become part of a family, and also practice your English skills daily. Next slide, please. So homestay is basically you would have a room in the family home. Every bedroom has been checked. Every home has been checked. They must have a bed, closet, dresser. It has to have a window that's safety approved and a desk. Likely you would have a shared washroom with the rest of the family. Or sometimes, if a family has 1 or 2 students, those students might share the washroom. The family would make meals for you if that's the program that you choose. And we do ask that families sit together and have meals, especially in the evening, which is our kind of our large meal here in Canada, which is a great time to talk about your day, learn about the culture of Canada, and practice your English skills. Next slide, please. So our promise to students is that we would make the best possible match. So as I said before, we interview, vet, and train all of our host families, and we will look at their profile and then your application to try and fit you with the best possible family. So we would look at things like, what are your interests? Do you love soccer, or are you really interested in art? And if so, we would try to match you with a family that has similar interests. We do offer 24/7 emergency support, so you can always reach somebody at Canada Homestay Network if you need us. As I mentioned, we interview all of our hosts. They have to get criminal records checks and pass a number of safety protocols before we would ever place a student in the home. We do student orientation. So once you've arrived in Canada, we would chat with you about homestay expectations and ways to get cell phones and bus passes and all those types of things. We are here to help resolve concerns. Obviously, when you're living with another family, sometimes things come up. So your relationship manager in the area would be available to you to meet in person, over Zoom, or phone call, anytime you have questions or need some help. And we can coordinate relocations or respites. So for example, if the host family was going on vacation and wouldn't be home, or if you decided it wasn't a good fit for you, we would work on finding you a relocation. We also have first language support. So with colleagues across the country, we have many languages that you can talk to somebody other than your relationship manager if you'd like to talk in your first language. Next slide, please. So obviously, coming to another family, there are some expectations and responsibilities of the student. So we do have something called a student participation agreement, which is part of the online application. So you could read through it before you ever complete the application. First and foremost is that you are agreeing to obey the laws of Canada, mainly being considerate of your host. We want you to be part of the family. So this is not a hotel. This is not just a room. This is a family experience. So we want you to join in with the family and be part of the family. Obviously, we understand you have your studies and you'll have your own personal life, but it is really nice to have a family to come home to and chat with when you can. You are responsible to attend school daily and maintain a good standing in school. So this program is only for students who are registered in an educational program, and it's not for you know, if you decide not to be in school or you're here for 2 months before or something like that, unfortunately, that would not be part of the program. So it is for students. Okay, and then of course, as in any home, we expect you to maintain a clean bedroom and clean up after yourself, and then communicating your plans to the host family. So it's really important for safety. You know, if you decide to go on a trip to Banff for a week or something like that, that you would let your host family know where you're going to be, when you're going to be home, and that way we can make sure you're safe, and that if something happens and you didn't come home on time, your host family would know how to reach you. Next slide, please. So here's our pricing. There is a one-time registration fee, and then we have full board, which is all of your meals included for $1,075 per month. Half board is breakfast and dinner. And we'll go into what those kind of entail in the next slide. $1,000 per month. Room stays if you don't want to have any meals. Sometimes this means that you can use the host kitchen. So you could buy your own ingredients, put them in the fridge and the cupboard and make your own meals. That would be something that you would request on the application. Some hosts are okay with that and some hosts are not. So if you can let us know what you're looking for, that would be great. And our plans do go for a calendar month. So if you're arriving mid-month, it would be a little bit different, but it basically works out to the same rates. Next slide, please. So here's a typical meal in Canada. Of course, typical is difficult. Canada is a multicultural nation, so we have families that have come from all over the world or have different backgrounds, but this is what you can typically expect. A small meal for breakfast, usually the student would make it, but the host would buy the ingredients. Lunch, we usually do a bagged lunch, sandwich type of thing, or maybe leftovers in a thermos. And then dinner is our large meal. As I said, we usually eat kind of between 5 and 7 for most families. We do ask the host to make a hot meal. It would include meat, vegetables, and some sort of carbohydrate. We don't tend to have meals where you have multiple courses. Of course, as I said, some families are different and it will look a little bit different, but this is sort of what you can expect to see. Next slide, please. So if you're interested in applying, or if you just have questions, you can go to our website. There is an application straight on the website, or you can find our phone number. We have a chat that you can talk with somebody. We have WhatsApp number. There's a number of different ways to communicate. So if you go to the website, you'll see all these different options. And we are really happy to answer any questions or give you any information. A little tip, the more information you put on the application, the better we can match you with a host family that will suit your needs and also your interests. So as much information as you can give us, that will really help. Once you apply, you'll receive an invoice by email within 5 business days. And if you have any questions about that, you can talk directly to our accounting team. Their information will be on that invoice, and they're very happy to help. We do not match students with a host family until we receive payment, because we have a lot of people who are sort of interested, but we need to know that you're actually coming. So once we've received payment, we will match you with a host family. And we do say it takes up to 30 days. So if you're coming tomorrow, it's probably not going to happen. But if you give us a few weeks time, we can find a really nice family for you. We do have an 8-week minimum start. So you need to come for 8 weeks to begin with. And then if you want, you can finish the program with us, or you can pay by semester or monthly after that. Okay, and if you have paid for the, if you've paid for another 8 weeks after your first minimum 8 weeks, we do require 1 calendar month's notice to leave the program. Okay, I believe that's it. Is there one more slide? Oh, things to remember. So always talking to your relationship manager. That is your person on the ground who's in your city. So they are living in Victoria and they're here to help. They want to talk to you and they want to know about you and be there for you to support you. Hosts are selected for their personality. So as I said, we interview, we train, and it's really important to us that we have hosts that are having students to support them and be there for them. This is not about having host families who are doing this just for money and who want 8 or 10 students in their home. We want a special kind of person to be a host family. And I've been hosting myself for 14 years. I've had almost 100 students through my home. I love it. My daughter is 17 now, and she has grown up with students. And, you know, every Mother's Day, I get WhatsApp messages and Facebook messages from my prior students who tell me about their life, and they're like, "Happy Mother's Day to my Canadian mom." So it's a really great experience. And I honestly feel like I have children all over the world. And, you know, by going through Homestay, you might find another family for life.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Karen, for your presentation, and thank you for letting us know about the Canada Homestay Network, your services. That was really great. Now I would like to give the virtual floor to Donielle McNabb, who's the Student Engagement Coordinator, and she's going to be talking to us about rental options in Victoria. Welcome, Donielle.
Great, thanks Ariadna, and thanks for having me. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to everyone here. I know we're probably all in different time zones. My name is Donielle McNabb. My pronouns are she and her. I work in the Student Engagement Department at Royal Roads University as a coordinator. And today I'll be telling you a little bit about off-campus rental options. Next slide, please. So one of the main questions we typically get when folks are looking for somewhere to stay is which cities should they look in, which ones are closest to the university. So a few that we do have that are close to the university include Colwood, which is technically where the university is located. There's also Langford, Highlands, and View Royal. Now, while you're doing your search, you may notice that you'll see places such as Metchosin or Souk that may pop up, and they do seem to be in close proximity to the school, which technically they are if you have a vehicle. But if you won't have a vehicle, then definitely you want to steer clear of those areas because they can be very inconvenient to get to the university if you'll need to take a bus. So the main places to focus on would be the 4 you see on screen here. Other places we've had students stay include Esquimalt, Victoria West, and even downtown Victoria or Saanich. They're a bit of a ways from the university, so it may take a little bit longer for you to get to school. There are buses that come from these areas, so they tend to be on the more convenient side. It's just proximity. We highly recommend that you try to find somewhere that is close to the university so that you don't have to worry about a very long commute each time you need to get to the university. Next slide, please. So the types of accommodation that we do have, you have the short-term options, one of which was mentioned earlier, and also long-term options. So for short-term options, those are the ones that you would book for, say, maybe 2 weeks to a month, so that you can take that time to find something that's a bit more permanent. Some students prefer to be here on the ground and look at places while they search for something that's more permanent. That's always an option. We've had students who've had success finding places while they're outside of Canada online, but just be very careful if that's the option that you're going to be choosing. You want to ensure that you cover all your bases if you're not going to be seeing that place in person, because there have been scams, and we want to make sure that we help you as much as possible to avoid those scams. So some of the short-term options include hotel suites. So we do have a few hotels that are close by to the university. So there's Solo Suites, which isn't your typical hotel. It's a self-check-in process. And we also have a discount code that you can use if you're going to be booking at Solo Suites. Our discount code is simply RRU, and you'll see the option to put the discount code in, and it will give you the Royal Roads rates. There's also a Holiday Inn Colwood. And typically, if you let them know that you're a student at Royal Roads, they'll most likely give you a special discount as well. There's an option of booking at a hostel. There are also Airbnbs in and around the area. And as Christine spoke about earlier, you have the option of staying on campus for approximately 14 days as you search for something that is a bit more permanent. Now, as far as long-term options go, again, homestay is one that you heard about a tad earlier. There's also the option to get a private suite. So that can typically either be upstairs or a basement suite, depending on that specific location. There's also the option to get an apartment at an apartment complex. So it could be, for example, a studio, also known as a bachelor suite. It could be a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, depending on how many persons you will be sharing with if you choose to share, or if you're coming with a family. There's also the option to get a house. And again, this is something that you could either get for yourself, depending on what you're looking for, or you can get a house that you can share with other individuals. Next slide, please. So there are a few things that you want to consider before you rent property off campus. So one of the things you want to consider is, what are the rules of that apartment complex or that property? Because you want to ensure that you're adhering to those rules while you're here or while you're staying there. Another thing to consider is if it's a month-to-month tenancy agreement, or if it's for a fixed length of time. You'll find that a lot of student-friendly rentals, they will do month to month, but you also have, for example, if you'll be staying at an apartment complex, most likely you will have to do at least a year worth of a lease, and then you can switch to month. So you want to consider that, because if you have that lease, you will be locked in for that year. And if you leave, or if you choose to leave before that year passes, it's highly likely that you will have to pay for the duration of that lease. So you want to be thinking about that as well. So if you're not sure and you think you just want to try somewhere and feel it out and see if it works for you, then your best option would be a month-to-month agreement. Also, you want to think about parking, storage, and laundry utilities. Are they offered? Are they included in your agreement? Some places will have parking, but it's not included. It's an additional fee. Some places, again, with storage, it's the same. You may or may not have storage, and if it's there, it may be an additional fee. Laundry, some places either may not have laundry, or it may have shared laundry, or you may have laundry en suite. So you want to, again, think about those things. Are you okay sharing laundry with other people in an apartment complex? If you are, then you can go for that option. If you're not comfortable, then you may want to find something that has your laundry in your apartment complex or in that house. You also have to have most likely do a security deposit. And if you'll be having a pet, you'll also have to do a pet deposit. So typically your security deposit is half the month's rent. Your pet deposit typically is the same. So if you will be going somewhere and you have a pet, you're most likely going to be paying double the rent at the beginning of your lease or at your time there. So you want to make sure you're thinking about those things as well. And on that note of pets, if you will be having a pet, pets aren't allowed in every rental property. So one of the things you want to ensure is that if you do have a pet that you'll be coming with, is that pets are in fact allowed in that building. You also want to consider your budget, because your budget will determine the kind of rental options that you go for, or the ones that will best suit your need. So if you think you have, say, for example, you have a budget of $800, maybe you want to be considering a homestay, or maybe you want to consider getting a roommate, so that will reduce the costs. And lastly, another thing you should consider is the proximity to things around you. So is it close to a bus route or a bus stop? Those are things you want to think about. You have some places that you may have to walk, say on average for 15, 20 minutes before you get to the closest bus stop. So are you okay with that? If not, you want to make sure you find something that is close to a bus stop on a bus route. If you don't have a vehicle, for example, is it close to the grocery store or other stores that you may want to use or go to? So that way it's a bit more convenient for you if you need to get anything. I will say that even if you live somewhere that isn't close to stores, there's an option for you to have grocery delivered to your apartment. So that's always an option. And even if you do live close to the store and you choose to use that feature, then you can always have groceries delivered to you. So you can think about that as well if you do find something that isn't necessarily close to stores, but it works for you in every other way. Next slide, please. So average rent, you'll see here, it may or may not be outside of this bracket, but just to give you an overall idea of how much you may be paying, depending on what you're using. So for homestay, as mentioned earlier, it's on average about $600 to $1,000. And I know I did see on Karen's slide earlier that if you're going to be getting that full service with 3 meals, it's going to be $1,075. So just to let you know, don't limit to what you see here on screen. Just be open that it may be a little bit more or a little bit less based on the bracket. So typically on this tier, you're able to get either a room that you share, a studio apartment, or a homestay. Between $1,000 and $1,800, you typically will get a studio, perhaps a 1-bedroom apartment, or even a house. It really does depend. There are quite a few factors that goes into the cost of the rent. So it can be a location, it could be the year the building was built. There are quite a few things to be considered. So, and typically you can find that information, or you can even ask the landlord to get that information. And then lastly, 1,800 or higher tends to be, again, studio apartments. You may get a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, or 3-bedroom apartment, or a house. So these are just some things to keep in mind. But again, just be open-minded that it may fall outside of these brackets depending on what you're looking for, and a few other factors. Next slide, please. So I wanted to touch a little bit on living with a roommate. Again, it's a great way to save on costs if you do get a roommate. Some situations we've had, for example, when I was a student, I had roommates. So it looked a little bit different based on where I stayed. So I lived in a suite at one point in time. It was a basement suite, and there were 2 of us. It was specifically for railroad students. So there were 2 of us, but we did not have the same rental agreement. And then when I moved from there, I started living with my classmates, and we got an apartment complex, and we just decided to share rent and utilities on our own. We made that agreement on our own. But if you decide to get a roommate, there are many ways that you can find roommates. You can find roommates on either there are groups that you'll find on Facebook and online, but also I think the most organic way and the one that I've seen most often is folks finding roommates within their cohort. But if you don't find somebody within your cohort, that is okay. Just make sure that when you initially meet that person, you're meeting them in a public area if it's in person, or you can also meet them virtually, because I think we've all perhaps grasped how to have virtual meetings by this point. So that's always an option as well. And then once you meet that person and you establish trust and decide if it's a good fit or not, then you can move forward to making sure that you have an agreement. So you will have your rental agreement with your landlord, but it's also very important to just draft a written roommate agreement just to say what your expectations of each other are. There are quite a few ways that you can have a roommate arrangement. So you can be co-tenants where you will be signing the same agreement, so that same rental agreement with your landlord. So that would be in the case where I had my classmates and we had the apartment complex together, or you can just be tenants in common. So you both live in the same area or that same house, but you have different rental agreements, which is the case when I lived in the basement suite. And then there's also the option of being an occupant, which I haven't experienced, but typically this is when you're subletting or subleasing from somebody. So somebody, perhaps they rented a 2-bedroom and then you're renting from them. So there's that option. But if you do that, please note that it will not be covered under the Residential Tenancy Act. So that's something to think about as you choose which option works best for you. Now, in your written roommate agreement, some of the things you want to be talking about is how you're going to be dividing expenses. So are you dividing your bills? If it's 2 persons, are you splitting it in half? For food, will you be sharing the cost of food, or is it a case where you'll do bills together, but you get your own food? That may be the option. For example, with my roommates, we got our own food because we just eat different things and we enjoy different things. So it just wasn't feasible for us to buy the same things. But for example, if it's somebody who you have the same palate and you enjoy the same things, would it make more sense for you to just share that cost as well? And you also want to make sure you're establishing house rules. So typically when you live somewhere, you're responsible for cleaning that space. So is it going to be every other week somebody cleans, or does this person always clean the bathroom and this person always cleans the kitchen? It really does depend on you specifically. So those are things you want to be thinking about to avoid any disagreements, for example. Visitor allowance is also something that's worth talking about, because even though we are all adults, most likely staying in these spaces, you also want to make sure that you're respecting the person you're living with. So that's a conversation worth having to say, you know, are we allowed to have visitors? Is there a certain time frame that you want to have visitors? So just talk about these things so that, again, try as best as possible to lay it all out so you can avoid any or avoid as much as possible any disagreements in the future. It may not be entirely possible to avoid all, but having an agreement certainly does help. Next slide, please. So I did mention the Residential Tenancy Act previously. It's just an act that outlines the rights and responsibilities of tenants and landlords. So a few things that they cover, for example, includes the tenant's rights of access, how to go about leaving the rental unit at the end of your tenancy, the return of your security deposit or pet damage deposit, and your landlord's obligation to repair and maintain the property, and also your obligation as a tenant to maintain anything or repair anything. I'd say if it's your first time, renting in BC, so you're relocating from another province or from another country, it's worth taking some time to even just skim through the Residential Tenancy Act, just so you have an idea of what your responsibilities are as a tenant, but also your rights, because it's very important that you know your rights when you're staying in a unit. Next slide, please. So now that I told you a little bit about the options that are available and things to consider, now I'll share with you a few resources that you can use when you actually have made all those decisions and you decide to go ahead and rent. So a good place to start is the Royal Roads Off-Campus Housing 101 website. I've included the link in the chat. And you'll see a range of options here. So you'll see things that cost maybe, well, there isn't anything for 600 on the screen here, but you see things for 750, 850. And then you'll see a few more things on the more expensive side, which is $2,000. $2,000, that is an apartment complex. It's 2 bathroom, 2 bedroom. So think about it. If you get an apartment complex like that and you split it, you'll be paying on average, say $1,000 and some change. And then also your utilities. So that's one way to go about it. Or if you get 750, it says 3 bed, 1 bathroom. 750 doesn't mean you're going to be getting 3 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. It most likely means that it's 3 bedrooms in a house with a bathroom, and you're going to be occupying one of those bedrooms and paying that 750. So you're paying for that bedroom and the common spaces and washroom that you will be using. So you can take a look at this website and see what works best for you. Do you want to get your own place? Do you want to get an apartment and perhaps get one of your cohort members to share with you, or do you just want to pay that $750 and move into somewhere that already has other individuals and perhaps maybe a very easy transition for you? It's entirely up to you. Next slide, please. But if you don't find anything on that website, or if you just want to explore other options, there are quite a few options out there that you can use. So you'll see listed on screen here. So we have, for example, Use Victoria, Kijiji, Victoria, Craigslist. Those are places that you can go. So those are websites online that folks will list available rentals and anything else that they'd like to sell. So you can check those websites. I'll just say be very careful if you go on these websites again, because there are rental scams out there and we don't want you to get caught up in a rental scam. So be very careful when you go on these websites. You also have websites such as Devon Properties or Pemberton Homes. So these typically are rental management companies. So typically if you go through these, they tend to be legitimate, and you'll be either getting an apartment complex or a house. And then there are a few other options such as Facebook Marketplace, where you can also go because there are quite a few rentals available on Facebook Marketplace. And then you have Greater Victoria Housing Society, Victoria Rental Estate Board, just to name a few. This list is not exhaustive, but it shows you quite a few places that you can go. And even on Facebook, you have other rental groups that you can join. Typically, you have to request to join, and you see folks who are posting in those areas, letting folks know that they're either renting or they're in search of something to rent. And you can go from there and have a discussion with anybody who, if you see someone who has a listing that aligns with what you're looking for. But again, be careful. And if at any point in time you have any doubts, you can always reach out to us and we'll try as best as possible to assist you. Next slide, please. Alrighty, so just a little bit about the process for renting. So typically the first step is to use the resources that we provide to find a place. Once you do so, if you find something you like, or you can just make a list of things that you see that you like. And the first thing that you want to do is contact the landlord. Most times in the listings, they'll let you know how you can contact the landlord, whether it's by email or phone. You can schedule an appointment to visit the place if you're here or if you're going to be coming here soon. If not, there are quite a few places that have virtual tours now I've been seeing. You can do a virtual tour. Or you can also, like what I did when I was just coming to Royal Roads is I had a Skype, because back then we were using Skype. So I had a Skype session with my landlord just to see if we're a good fit. And I was able to see the apartment in that way before I made a decision. So that's also an option because we're so heavily dependent on the virtual world right now. So you can use those options. But I know a lot of folks tend to prefer being here in person and seeing it for themselves, which is always a very good idea. Also ask questions. Ask as many or as little questions as you have. This is a space that you'll be committing to, and you'll be paying rent monthly, and you'll be living there, and your comfort is priority. So you want to make sure that you're asking all the questions that you need to ask. You want to make sure you're asking what's included. If it's not explicitly listed on the website, does it include utilities or not? And any other question that you think you should be asking, ask those questions. Once you ask the questions and you decide that it's the right place for you, and the landlord also decides that you're a right fit, then you can start coordinating your move-in date to relocate to that apartment. At that point in time as well, you want to make sure that you're doing your deposit. We typically suggest trying to do an e-transfer just because you can have that paper trail. This isn't to say you can't do cash at all if that's the only option you have. But if you do have to pay with cash, then try to make sure that you get a receipt. But it's the best option, we say, to do an e-transfer. And also you're going to sign a contract. Make sure that you read the contract thoroughly. I know many of us are guilty of not reading through contracts, but you want to make sure you know what you're signing. So read through the contract before you sign. Next slide, please. Alrighty, so just a few tips on how to avoid scams and minimize the risk of falling in that trap. So first, if somebody is urgently asking you for cash and demanding a cash deposit, try as best as possible to ask more questions and see exactly if that person is who they say they are. You want to make sure you're demanding a written lease. Never rent somewhere without having that formal written contract that you have signed and your landlord has signed as well. And again, as I've mentioned before, be sure to read it before you sign. So you're not signing something that maybe a few months down the line, you realize that you signed something that you did not want to agree to. And if you can meet the landlord in person, we know this isn't always possible. As I mentioned, I met my landlord initially via Skype. That's always an option as well. If you're comfortable, if you're not comfortable, no need to do that. Again, you can always get a short-term rental and wait until you're here so you can meet that person in person. Also, speaking with the current tenants isn't always possible, but sometimes you maybe through word of mouth or through a senior or somebody in your class, you may hear about something that's available. So if you know folks who are staying there, you can ask them questions as well to see if that's a good fit for you and if that person is who they say they are. If they're requesting too much information, that's a red flag. So for example, if they're asking you for your social insurance number and other things that you don't think you should be sharing, that's also something that you want to explore a little bit more before you commit to it. Listing photos are suspicious. So sometimes you'll go on a listing and there's one photo or there are no photos, or you'll find that there are 5 listings with the same photos but different addresses. Again, that's something you may want to explore a little bit further, because you'll have folks who will have fake listings and will pull actual photos from other posts and add it to theirs to make it seem legitimate. Deceptive emails. I remember once I was renting and somebody told me that they're away in another country doing missionary work. But if I pay them, they'll mail me the keys. That was the email I got. That was a very suspicious email for me. So I just backed away at that point in time. So that's one that I've seen, that I'm not the only one who's gotten that email. So be on the lookout for somebody who says they're outside of the country, but they'll mail you keys. That's definitely something you want to explore further, or perhaps reach out to us or somebody else to get additional support. Inconsistent rent pricing. So if the price of the rent either seems too expensive or too good to be true, you definitely want to make sure that you're paying attention to that as well. And if your landlord isn't keen on sharing who they are and they're trying to keep their identity hidden, then of course that's not something that you want to commit to. You want to find somebody who is very open and honest and doesn't have a problem either meeting with you in person or meeting with you virtually. Again, if you have any doubts at any point in time, Student Services is here to support you. I've put our email address in the chat, so you can send us a quick email. Not saying that we are experts, but we've been doing this for a while, so we'll again try as best as possible to assist you in any way that we can. Or if we can't assist you, then we can perhaps redirect you to the most appropriate place for you to get assistance. And I believe that is it for me. And I guess at this point in time, we perhaps open the floor to questions. Ariana, you can let me know.
Thank you so much, Danielle, for sharing all that information. Wow, very valuable information. Thank you ever so much. And yes, we're now open for questions. If you have any questions, please type it in the chat. I haven't seen any questions coming so far throughout the presentation. So I'm just gonna wait a little bit, a few more seconds. And if not, then I wanna thank you all for participating in this session. I want to thank especially Christine, Karen, and Danielle, our wonderful speakers, for sharing all this information with us. And I would also like to share with all the participants that if you have any questions in regards to our programs or our services, reach out to us. You can reach out to our enrollment advisors at learn.more@royalroads.ca or international enrollment advisors at learn.more.international@royalroads.ca. You can also contact us on WhatsApp by just scanning that code that you see on the screen, and we will be more than happy to answer all your questions. So thank you everyone again for participating, and looking forward to many more sessions. Thank you.